Huge news on the international front. U.S. agreeing to a historic nuclear agreement with Iran. We will explore tonight whether this is a good or a bad deal for the U.S. Then we're going to take a look at the politics surrounding it, and trust me, there's plenty of it. Hillary Clinton supporting it, Republicans going ballistic over it. We'll debate all the aspects of this deal. And Eric Garner's family gets nearly $6 million in a settlement for New York City, but they're still looking for justice. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And we start tonight with the nuclear deal with Iran. Now, it took months to hammer out, and the deadlines kept getting pushed back and back. But after intense negotiations between Iran, the U.S., and several other nations, finally, the deal came together. After 17 straight days of rocky negotiations and months of delicate diplomatic wrangling, this morning, an historic nuclear agreement with Iran.
We have stopped the spread of nuclear weapons in this region.
The president hailing a new chapter in Iran's relationship with the West, touting the deal as a victory for diplomacy.
This deal offers an opportunity to move in a new direction. We should seize it.
The agreement sharply limits Iran's nuclear capabilities, preventing Tehran from developing a nuclear weapon for at least 10 years. In exchange, bruising economic sanctions that have crippled Iran for years will come to an end, including those aimed personally at several controversial Iranian officials. And in a compromise on a major sticking point, a long-standing arms embargo on Iran will also be lifted over time. Iranians watching closely today, praising the deal as a win-win.
Now we are starting a new chapter of hope, and let's build on that.
Lawmakers in Washington now have 60 days to review the deal, and already Republicans are threatening to block it.
Based on what I know, I'm highly skeptical at best.
The president issuing a dire warning about the alternative.
Put simply, no deal means a greater chance of more war in the Middle East.
Now, a short time ago, I spoke to Christopher Dickey. He is the Daily Beast's world news editor. And we're very pleased to be joined by Christopher Dickey. He is the Daily Beast world news editor. He's kind enough to join us from Paris. Christopher, thanks for the time.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Well, let me deal first with some of the most frequent and probably loudest criticisms of this, and tell me which of them have any merit or more politically driven. First is that you're rewarding basically a nation state that sponsors terrorism by lifting what were in effect crippling but effective sanctions on them to carry out their means. Are we rewarding a bad actor?
Well, I mean, I think to some extent that's true, but as President Obama was saying, you don't make these kinds of deals with people who are already your friends. In fact, part of the purpose of this is to try to change the behavior of Iran. And one way to do that is to try and bring it into the community of nations so it's not always acting like an outlier and supporting renegades around the world. Whether it'll be successful, I don't know. But certainly the policies that have gone before were certifiably unsuccessful.
From the terms as you understand them, do you think the access and the transparency within Iran will allow the inspectors to see what they need to see to get comfort? And moreover, even in a best case scenario, American officials acknowledge that after year 10 of this deal, especially ramping up to years 13, 14, 15, there's going to be very little time in what they call basically a breakout here, that Iranians could take no time to build their own nuclear weapons. So A, can we trust them? And B, is this delaying possibly the inevitable with Iran getting their hands on a nuke anyway?
Well, can we trust them? No. Can we try and build trust with them? Yes, we can try. Are they going to be in a better position to build atomic weapons 10 years down the road or 15 years down the road than they are today if they choose to do that? Absolutely, they will be. Built into the agreement is all kinds of research and development on much more advanced centrifuges, what they use for uranium enrichment, than they are normally using today. So all of that, yes, that's in play. But 10 years, 15 years, that's a long time in this world. And I think, again, the hope is that they will obey the letter of the agreement and that they will live up to one of their central commitments. They say twice in the agreement that they have absolutely no desire or intention of building nuclear weapons. maybe we can hold them to that.
Christopher, were you surprised at all that as part of this deal, we're also lifting an arms embargo? I mean, there's a distinction, I guess, with some of the conventional weapons and missiles, but nonetheless, we're lifting an arms embargo, which a lot of people didn't think was central to this deal.
Well, I think that's one of those things that the Iranians raised fairly late in the game, and we said, well, are we going to let this be a deal breaker? Maybe it should have been. But I think that at the end of the day, we are looking at a situation, particularly in the fight against ISIS, against the so-called Islamic State, where we want to have a certain level of cooperation with the Iranian military. Whether lifting the arms embargo is going to help that or hinder it, especially given how many times the Iranians have used arms against American soldiers in the Middle East, I'm not sure. All of this is a very, very delicate matter, and all of it is going to take a lot of testing and verification as we move forward.
Finally, just a couple of political questions. On a broader level, and we heard these criticisms first, when we're talking about Myanmar and Cuba, and now, obviously, as we're dealing with Iran, that diplomacy with bad actors connotes with a sense of weakness. I mean, you saw, and I grant you, from Usual Suspects, the Newt Gingrichs of the world, that were the editorials today, that we capitulated in some way to bad guys who outmaneuvered us. Obviously, we have an election year next year, Christopher. Do you think that's going to be the narrative, that you're weak if you basically play ball with bad guys?
Well, let's see. Did we enter Iraq stronger or weaker than we are now? I think it's pretty clear that the effort to show what tough guys we were in 2003 in Iraq has wound up absolutely having a debilitating effect on the United States of America as the war there has dragged on, and we seem to be incapable of extricating ourselves from it. So all that tough guy talk, that's from these old farts excuse my language, that's from these old guys on Capitol Hill who are going to send a lot of young Americans to die in these wars. And I don't go with it for a moment. There are good wars to fight, but there are very few, and we haven't fought any of those in a very long time.
Well, last question has to do with the old farts on Capitol Hill, and more specifically, in the next 60 days, what's your guess as to how this plays out? Obviously, there had to be some head counting here before the press conference today. I saw measured responses from House Democrats, although they did say that Hillary Clinton clearly addressed some of them. She was strongly behind this, behind closed doors. Publicly, she's tempering it a little bit. Republicans, John Boehner among them, have huge issues, they say, with this. At the end of the day, you think the votes are here to get this thing through or not?
I think probably the votes are there to get a vote against it through, but I don't think the votes are there to override a veto if President Obama vetoes it, which he certainly will. And, at the end of the day, this is going to be one of those ideological debates. We wish that Congress could get past ideology, but basically if Obama does anything, the Republicans say it's wrong, and the Democrats, who are actually fairly weak, will say, oh, well, we're going along with it, but we're going to hedge our bets. Must be very frustrating for the head of state, but I think at the end of the day, this will go through from Obama's point of view.
Christopher Dickey, I certainly appreciate some time here this afternoon. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Sure, Richard, my pleasure.
All right, so we've looked at what's in the deal and also what it means for the U.S. Next, we're going to bring in our political panel to debate the politics of it all, and there's plenty of them there. Some of the reactions predictable, but some not so much.